Hi, welcome to Write More Life. I am marketing extraordinaire Sarah Elgatian with the Midwest Writing Center, and I have here with me today Alexandra Rucinski. She is an activist, a storyteller, and a parent, and we're going to talk about censorship in advance of Banned Books Week. I'm super excited to have Alexandra here. Um, I've known her for some time and love listening to her talk, and I think that she's going to be a great asset to thinking about how we talk to our kids about censorship, about difficult topics, about banned books. Alexandra, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, no problem.
So I know that you are passionate about censorship, so it's maybe a little bit of bias here, but can you tell me how and if your thinking changed as you became a parent and your son started going to school?
So, it really, so for me, I was raised really conservative. Like, I was raised with censorship, so to speak. My life was censored in a lot of ways. And that's made me more, um, I don't like censorship because of it, because I think it's important that we have these conversations and that we don't water down images and things that bring about those strong feelings and discussions that need to happen. And I think kids can take on a lot more than we give them credit for. They know a lot more about what's going on around them than we give them credit for. And I know I've talked to my son about Black Lives Matter. I've talked to my son about what's going on in the world. He knows how I feel about Donald Trump. Um, I don't hide those things. And I had parents that were actually really good about that. Even though they raised me conservatively, they weren't people who censored um, art and music and books and things of that nature from me. Like in the religion, yes, that's what was expected, but my parents were actually really good about not doing that. And I think it's helped make me the person that I am because I was able to really look at those things and not have them be watered down or taken apart. And I think that's important.
Totally. Um, I think that a lot of us don't have that. I mean, my parents were really good at talking to me about anything I had questions about, thankfully. But I think that a lot of people maybe don't encounter difficult things or difficult topics, controversial topics in their regular life as children. And then when they grow up,
Mm.
they feel very protective because it's difficult to think about, especially the first time you encounter something. Um, we have, well, I'll talk about it in just a second. We've got the list, of course, of the top banned books in 2019, and those top topics, the justification for asking for a ban on these books. The top ones are gender and sexuality,
Mm.
followed by politics, cursing, and violence.
Mm.
So
Mm.
um, if you first, I want to talk to you as a parent, and then I want to talk to you as an activist. If if your son comes in contact with these things, how do you address it? Or if um, your school library is dealing with this sort of controversy, how do you talk to your kids about it?
I think the biggest thing is to not pretend like it's not there. I think a lot of parents do the whole it's not really going on, we don't have to really acknowledge this or let's just kind of sweep it under the rug. That's very damaging. That's something that I don't do with my child. Like I don't pretend those things don't exist. I feel like it's my responsibility as a parent to talk to him about those things and to really have conversations because this is going to shape his worldview. It's going to shape how he navigates his life. It's going to navigate how he navigates his gender and his sexuality, how he navigates how he treats others. Those are really important things. So I think it's important not to um, gloss it over or worse, pretend it doesn't exist. One second, the baby's fussing. I got to grab her, but I will be right back.
Oh, of course. Um, so while Alexandra's away, she has a new baby. Um, I'm gonna talk about the top banned or challenged books of 2019, as we are now in the 2020 banned book week. That's next week. Um, and frequently challenged books. Oh my goodness.
All right, I'm giving her
Top
her
10.
Susie. Be right back.
The top 10 most challenged books of 2019 are George by Alex Gino. The reasons are to avoid controversy for queer LGBTQIA plus content and transgender characters. And the reasoning behind that is libraries should not put books in a child's hand that require discussion.
Oh, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. Libraries are not supposed to foster discussion. That would offend librarians, I would think, because I mean,
I mean, so the Banned Books Week is sponsored or run by the American Library Association. So absolutely does offend librarians. But you know, as a writer in a writing organization, you know, we create work, we create art in order to interrogate, understand the difficult topics. So for me, it's crazy to think that any kind of art would not require discussion. Art
that's what
exists for
art
that
exists
reason,
for.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
And even with books for young children, um, I'm thinking when I say this, six to 11. I'm thinking elementary school. You know, even the boxcar children that talks about homelessness and death. You know, the Babysitters Club. I'm thinking of series I read in elementary school.
Yeah, I think about those things too.
You know, they dealt in the original Babysitters Club. They dealt with death. They dealt with mixed. Is that what it's called? Mixed families with divorce and then remarrying. They dealt with illness, you know, and those are not books that we consider controversial. Um, the other books that we have on the top 10 list of 2019, that was George. I don't know if you've encountered that book, Alexandra. Beyond Magenta, Transgender Teens Speak Out. I'm again challenged for LGBTQIA plus content for its quote effect on any young person who would read it. A Day in the Life of Marion Bundo, again for queer content.
So
It
irritating that
is
it's all queer content that they're really having a problem with, and it's really frustrating because it's just like, what are they afraid of? Like, what are they
well,
so afraid of?
that one is a picture book. It's Marlin, not Marion. I've read it; it's adorable. But what's fun about this is the concern is quote designed to pollute the morals of its readers. So here's something I would like to ask you, Alexandra, as a mother and an activist. This is both. Um, what do you and someone who grew up in a very sheltered home? Uh, you know, polluting the morals. What's your take on that as a concept?
I think that it's really not up to them to decide what someone's moral code is. They don't get to define what morality is. They don't get to say, well, this isn't moral, so you can't read that. Well, that's not right. Like, to try and dictate what is moral and what is not, and especially when you're talking about sexuality and gender, those are fundamental parts of who a person is, and that is something that kids are navigating whether you like it or not. And there are children that are queer, there are children that are trans, and they deserve to be able to not feel so alone, to be able to pick up a book and see themselves and start to be like, okay, this is, and if a child isn't trans, then it teaches them empathy, it teaches them how to relate to someone who's like that. Nothing about those things are negative whatsoever. It's very frustrating that they want to stop children from being empathetic and stop children from being able to navigate their world without pain and without shame. Like, all of that, that's immoral to me. That's what's immoral, is hurting children like that.
So I was going to go through. Yes, I think that I agree with everything you said. I was going to go through every single book, but 8 out of 10 are for queer content. The ones that are not are The Handmaid's Tale, challenged for quote profanity, vulgarity, and sexual overtones, which is ironic to me. I would think that it's because it's subversive politically.
Mm-hmm.
Other one is Harry Potter, for discussion. from discussion for referring to magic and with witchcraft containing actual curses and
Which
characters that
again
use,
is them
quote,
fostering their
nefarious
own
methods.
religious beliefs onto people, because there are some people that like have those, that are Wiccan or that are like that, and that's their personal faith. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it's just, I feel like there's this idea that if you're not white, Christian, cis, heteronormative, then your viewpoints in life don't count. And especially when art is involved, like if it's not within that box, they freak out. And it's just really frustrating. It really is.
Absolutely. I spoke with, had on the show last week, a children's librarian who brought up something really, really interesting to me that surprised me because I feel like normally when we see these challenged books, what we're seeing is someone's political opinion influencing what they think is appropriate for children. What she brought up, this was Madeline Belk in a Chicago librarian. What she brought up, so my cats are fighting, and I know that they're going to get loud, and it's just distracting me. That some parent brought to her desk a picture book that was about trains, and in this picture book, there was an image of a child standing in front of a train on train tracks, and the parent was like, "I don't think this is safe to have for children." Because if your kid is really interested in trains, you want to teach like safety, not standing in front of them as they come.
Yeah.
And Madeline had a really solid take on that, which was, if if we allow any censorship, then we allow all censorship. Um, and probably the thing to do is maybe change that illustration, but also to stop with your child and say, what's wrong with this picture? Um, why is this bad? Of course, with some picture books, we don't necessarily we will let the kid. We're probably reading with our child, but we'll also let the kid browse on their own because that's a lot of fun looking through the pictures and guessing the story. So I guess that's just another moment for discussion, right? Would that then, under the reasoning for George being censored, um, is that to be banned because it's a book that requires discussion?
I think all good art requires discussion, and the best art is always being discussed. So, I mean, that's the whole point of art, is to provoke thoughts and feelings and have conversations. And sometimes those are hard conversations, but they're important conversations.
Or to express them, yeah. I often get into this downward spiral talking about what art should be as a consumer of art, but I don't ever want to imply that like there's any limit to the art you make. I know that you were not saying that, but it's important for me to
There is
add
no
that.
limit. There shouldn't be a limit.
I went back to 2018 because 8 out of the 10, and I can list them. 8 out of the 10 were for queer content. Sex is a Funny Word, Prince and Knight, I Am Jazz, Handmaid's Tale, Drama, Harry Potter, and Tango Makes Three. In 2018, we saw a few of the same books: George, A Day in the Life of Marlon Bundo, Drama. That's all of the overlap. But these ones I found much more interesting because there's so much more variety. Captain Underpants.
Oh, my son loves Captain Underpants.
I've never heard of this one being challenged. I worked at a bookstore. I worked in education.
That's ridiculous.
And the reason is it is perceived to encourage disruptive behavior, and one of the books includes a same-sex couple. The Hate You Give, banned and challenged because it was anti-cop.
Fun fact, I got kicked out of a book club for that book.
For The Hate You Give?
Yeah, I suggested we read it, and they were like, "You're trying to start a fight, and you're being controversial," and so yeah.
Like they started a fight. Tell me more about that, though. Tell me about your book group and then the discussion that followed The Hate You Give.
It was like a casual book group, and yeah, there were a lot of conservative women in it. And truthfully, when I joined the book club, I was not the flaming liberal activist that I am now. But in the course of my time, I changed a lot, and then the kind of books I wanted to read changed, and I started to want to have these conversations. So I suggested that book, and they freaked out. And when I say freaked out, like absolutely freaked out, like kicked me out of the book club because I suggested that book. And because they felt like I wanted to fight with them and wanted to have I wanted to open their minds a little bit, and I wanted to have a discussion that I thought was really important and pertinent. And I think that's the whole point of literature, but apparently for them, it's not. Apparently some people read and don't read to actually challenge their worldviews or to learn anything. And that, to me, is, I mean, there's nothing wrong with reading for pleasure, but I also do think that, you know, books are an art form and they exist for a reason. And one of the reasons is to expand our worldview and to help feed empathy.
Absolutely. I know that as a kid, I would read as escapism a little bit. But now, you know, I read anything I can get my hands on, and a lot of it is because I want to learn. And I think particularly since June, since we've been having a lot of discussion of racial violence and police violence, people are learning. I mean, people are reading to learn, and part of that is, you know, we want to read fiction because that's what we love to read. Nonfiction is hard. It feels like school.
I think it's a human thing. We really relate to stories. We've done this for centuries, and I mean, from the beginning of time, we share things through story, through parable, and through fable, and there's just ways that we like to communicate information and important things to each other. And stories are a really big part of that, a fundamental part of that. We really do respond to stories to learn things.
Yeah. What I was going to say is something that's really special about fiction is that we can learn real life things through it without feeling like we're reading a textbook. I read a lot of nonfiction. I don't think that nonfiction feels good nonfiction, right? It doesn't feel that difficult to read to me. But when we read fiction, we're given permission to enter a world without having to say, you know, this was researched and this is the newspaper and whatever. So the idea to me,
there's a lot more freedom there. Yeah, I see
a book group turning down, first of all, a YA book based on perceived controversy is wild to me. That's another big thing with censorship. It isn't that parent very often who is like, this picture scares me. It's people who have heard something and challenge based on that more than on.
Well, a good example would be the film Cuties right now on Netflix, and people freaking out about that film and not really, first of all, not even seeing it, not knowing anything except for a soundbite clip and a mob of outraged people that are refusing to actually have a hard conversation about girls and their sexuality and how they are over-sexualized at a young age, and refusing to like even begin to look at the point the writer was trying to make with her film. You know, it's frustrating when people do that to art and they rip it apart like that, and they go for the shock and awe values, and they don't actually think, why did someone create this, and what was the reason they created it? What was the motivation behind making this piece of art? And it's very frustrating to me, and we're seeing that right now.
Yes, totally. Which is hard to do, hard to think about, I think, as a consumer of art. I just want to consume it. And I don't know, I always felt like in school when you would read like the bio of the writer before reading the book, I always was like, this taints my experience. I don't want to know this till after the fact.
Yeah, that's why it's on the back of the book.
But it is important to think about if something scares you. Let's see, number 6 in 2018, 13 Reasons Why, to restrict addressing teen suicide. That's something that I almost understand, right? You don't want to put these ideas in someone's head, but the problem is the ideas are already there, and if we don't discuss it,
I can understand the conversation of that it may be 13 Reasons Why glamorized suicide in a way, and that's an issue. I don't think it should be glamorized in any way. I think it should be seen as, you know, a real mental health thing with a lot of compassion and a lot of discussion about the realities of it and why people struggle and what we can do to help to prevent suicide that is sensitive to the needs of people with mental health issues. I can understand why people got upset. I do think it did bring up conversations that were important around suicide. And that's an important thing to talk about. It's hard. People don't want to talk about teenage suicide, but it happens and it's real and we need to talk about it.
That was another thing Madeline, the librarian, brought up last week. She said the original ending of the book, the main girl did not succeed. Also, that nothing at all in the book is glorifying suicide. It was all
the Netflix
from,
show took it in a different direction.
Right, and,
it really
and
did.
that book has been out for 20 years, I think.
I know. I read it when it came out, and then there was a huge controversy over it years later, and I was like, I read this book. Yeah.
Let's see. The next one is This One Summer, which I'm not familiar with. Challenge for profanity, sexual references, and certain illustrations. I'm interested in that. Skippy John Jones. Challenge for depicting stereotypes of Mexican culture. I've read this book, but it's been 8 or so years, maybe 5. I don't know how old it is. I read it when I was a nanny. It looks like it is not written by a Mexican, Judy Schachner. I don't know much about that one. The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. Banned and challenged for sexual references, profanity, violence, gambling, underage drinking, and religious viewpoints. I knew that this book.
That's so frustrating. If it's like not Christian viewpoints, then it's a problem, right?
I can't remember. I've read this one, of course. I don't know why I said of course. I read a lot. And it's just like a kid's journal. So that interests me. And I mean, of course, what is exciting about this book is that it's from an Indigenous kid about leaving the reservation for school. So it's something that should be seen by people outside of Indigenous communities and inside Indigenous communities for the complicated identity issues. So that one's interesting to me. The next one, This Day in June, another LGBTQIA plus content, and Two Boys Kissing, same reason. Given the hot topics here, I'm, I don't know, kind of impressed that it seems so single-minded with the top 10. I remember as a kid, it was always about magic and witchcraft. Do you have that same memory? I think we're pretty close in age.
About Harry Potter?
Just about the banned books always being about magic and witchcraft.
Yeah, well, the big one was Harry Potter when I was a kid, right. Which now I have feelings about Harry Potter because of J.K. Rowling sucking so much, but that's different. That's something separate. As far as the story, yeah, I do remember the controversy over it being witchcraft and Christians freaking out about it, which is kind of ironic because the story is all about good conquering evil, and there's a lot to be learned about that in the story, which, I mean, their themes in Christianity align with it pretty strongly, but apparently they still have problems with it because of the whole witchcraft thing. But the actual story is definitely can be seen from a Christian lens, so to speak, if they wanted to go there with it. I don't think there's anything wrong. I mean, it's, again, that's a matter of Christian people thinking that anything that's not their religious viewpoint is invalid or dangerous, which is
certainly
wrong.
Not all Christians, right?
Not all Christians, but like a subset of them that who spearhead these censorship things, because it's a lot of those types of people that do that. A lot of times what they deem offensive is just different.
So something that I really liked, this is on the ALA website, is a quote from a pastor on the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime. He says, "Obviously, I'm a Christian and I take my God very seriously, but if I just simply ban everything that's going to be said about my God or about my faith, then I'm living in my own little narrow world." Something that I think is really important about that too is, I guess it doesn't say that a man said that. I'm assuming that's unfair. You have enough faith that your faith is not shaken. by that.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to discuss the difference between a ban and a challenge. Again, this is according to the ALA, who sponsors and runs Banned Books Week. A challenge is an attempt to remove or restrict materials or services based on content. A ban is the removal of those materials or cancellation of services based on content.
Mm-hmm.
It's an important distinction. Things have to be challenged before they are banned. And um, we have, sorry, I had the infographic up a moment ago. Most of the, I should probably share my screen. Huh? Let's do that. Okay. There we go. Who initiates challenges? Board and administration is the highest. These are the little ones. Okay, so we've got 45% is patrons at public libraries, then parents at 18%, followed by board and administration, which is at libraries and at schools, political and religious groups. Librarians and teachers are 8%. That surprises me. 3% is elected officials and 1% is students.
Okay, so the patrons would mean like people who go to the library?
Yes.
And they initiate the challenge. And then as far as the board and administration, is there any way to know the diversity of the panel that makes this decision in terms of?
I'm sure there is, but I don't have that.
Because that's what I would be curious to know is what like how diverse is the panel of people who get to make that choice, and what kind of perspectives are being put forth as far as, because who's making those decisions, it's important to know just how diverse or not diverse that panel of people are.
That would be interesting to know, and I am sure the information is out there, and I will look into it. So I wanted to follow that infographic up with this one. Where do challenges take place? Because that last one was on from libraries, who is bringing the challenges, and this one is where do the challenges take place? So most of the challenges, 66%, are at public libraries, followed by school libraries, and we saw here patrons of public libraries, and then parents. So parents, I'm guessing, correlates to the school libraries. 12% is schools themselves. So it doesn't say if that's private schools or public schools. But looking at this one, I'm guessing that board and administration correlates here with schools, and 2% in academia, which I assume is higher ed. 1% is special libraries and prisons, so that would be private libraries. But I'm interested in the effect in prison libraries, because that's interesting that we want to censor prisoners.
It is.
I'm going to go back here and look for, here it is. This is a word cloud, of course, so the bigger the item is, the more often it comes up as a challenge, as a reason for challenging. As you know, we saw this already in the in the last two top 10 challenges, that LGBTQIA plus content was number one by far.
Yeah.
Presenting political viewpoint, sexually explicit, and violence are coming up almost as big. But the other ones are more interesting. Radical Islam is in there. Abortion, pro-immigrant, anti-Semitic, rape, racial slurs, climate change. Grammatically incorrect is on there. I'll see if here's right here. Grammatically incorrect. Stereotypical representations, I think, is interesting, because it's hard to be like, no, it's okay to have that, but you know, like our librarian last week said, you can't say yes to one thing and then expect the line to not move. So that's tough.
I'd really like to know what their definition of anti-police is.
Yeah, that would be that would be good to know. But I have the feeling that these terms are maybe not defined in advance.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to say like, oh no, stereotypical representations and racial slurs and rape are fine.
Well, but having a conversation about how to prevent sexual violence and how to navigate having it done to you is different than just being like rape and just one word and not actually talking about
Mm-hmm.
the reality of it,
And
because
it
sexual
it
assault is a
also,
real.
we don't have the information here that says we don't have the information here that says like, is it glorifying rape or is it rape? We don't
Exactly.
have.
That's the distinction that would need to be known.
I think what in something like stereotypes and racial slurs, probably what's happening is, a book that is focused on racial stereotypes, or I guess it doesn't say racial stereotypes. I'm thinking of Jimmy John Jones.
I mean, I think
You
that is
know,
valid
how
because
did it
people,
how did it get published in the first place?
yeah, people don't want to feel like their culture and who they are as people is being presented as a cartoon, and that happens way too much with people who aren't white.
So as my baby, as my final question, we're coming up on 2 o'clock, and I want to give our writing prompt. Do you have any advice on how to have these conversations with your children and maybe with your peer parents?
I think about what you would have wanted your parents to say to you when you were a kid. How would you have wanted an adult to help you navigate this? And be honest. Be honest with kids, because kids are really smart and they know what's going on, and they're looking to their parents and the leaders in their life to help them kind of navigate through it, and give them opportunities to tell you how they're feeling. And that's important too, is not just to project your feelings, but to also ask them how they're feeling, and listen to how they feel, because that's an important part of the conversation. But definitely think about what would you want adults in your life to have said to you when you were that age, or and that's a big thing for me, is how would I have wanted this to be navigated for me when I was this age? If I was this age when this happened, how would I want to be talked to about this? Kind of put yourself in the shoes of a child again, and ask yourself those questions. I think that's important.
Do you have any advice for talking to other parents about it? I know you're really passionate and definitely move with your passions, but do you have advice on how to talk to other parents about these things, or something you wish you would have said to your book group?
I think we need to have honest conversations with other parents about these things, about what we want our kids to learn, and realizing that hiding things from them, censoring things, is going to hurt them in the long run, because they're going to find these things out eventually. It's just a matter of who do they find it out from and how do they find it out. And
I love
parents
that.
have the power to make sure that their first introduction to these things are positive, and that's a powerful thing. It's important.
I love that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You are welcome to jump off now. I'm going to do a writing prompt. You're also welcome to stay and do the prompt, but I think you literally have your hands full.
I do. I really do. She's being good though.
Um,
She's not fussing. She's just kind of looking around.
Having a good time learning about censorship.
Yeah. Oh, now
So
she's starting to fuss. Good timing.
please, to my greater audience, also to you, Alexandra, of course, join us next Tuesday, September 29th at from 7 to 9 p.m. We're going to be right here on Facebook Live doing our annual banned book reading. Shout out to the Rock Island Public Library, of course, for being our partner in all things. We're going to have lots of local Iowa and Illinois readers reading their favorite banned books. We've got
That's really cool. Mine's The Giver. That's my favorite. Is The Giver. It's my favorite banned book.
you know what?
For
I've
sure.
never read it.
You need to read The Giver. Everyone must read The Giver.
I own it, and it's definitely, I'll definitely read it before lockdown.
I could talk about The Giver for like hours, especially now as an adult in my life, and I could talk about The Giver forever.
Let me see. We've got, I know, librarian from North Liberty, a librarian and author. Eliza David will be reading from Toni Morrison's Sula. Genevieve Trainer, arts editor at Little Village, will be reading Common King. Izzy Urban, local author and professor, will be reading Twelfth Night by Shakespeare. Keishan Collins, professor at Blackhawk. You can
Yeah, I'm gonna go now, but I will definitely keep in touch with this conversation.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. It's so great to have you. You have a great day. Write
You
more light into your
too. No
life.
problem. Yep.
Local, let's see, Keishwan College, professor at Blackhawk and author. Her book is coming out soon, called Flowing Water, Falling Flowers, coming out on MWC Press here on October 15th. She will be reading On the Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. We've got Dee Canfield reading The Kite Runner. Emily Kingery, professor at St. Ambrose, will be reading From Native Son by James Baldwin. Monica Fink will be reading from Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe. Madeline Belk will be reading from Prince and Knight. So that'll be a really great event at 7 p.m. Tuesday right here on Facebook Live. You're also welcome to join our Zoom conversation, or I mean our Zoom party on it by emailing me. That information will be in the comments, how to contact me about it. Now I want to move on to our writing prompt. I'm going to do another 2-minute one because we are getting close to time on that. But I want us to do some free writing on censorship. Shocking, I know. I'm gonna take this as a prompt. I'm gonna put myself into a character and try and have that conversation from this character about censorship. Maybe from the point of view of someone who's trying to censor something. That's something that I would like to learn to empathize with. So I think that's what I'm going to try to do in my free write, in my prompt. So I've got 2 minutes on the clock here. Let's write. About 2 minutes is super short. I did, like I said, try to get in the point of view of someone who wants to censor something. And in just that 2 minutes, I got really sad. I was trying to inhabit the head of a parent who finds tough literature in their children's room. And then I got into this place where it was like, why didn't he come to me? Why does he want to know about these things? And I think I'm going to go into maybe something like a parent should be a higher influence on choosing literature for their kids. I don't know. This is totally new for me. But part of something that I really love about being an artist, about writing, is that you can go into these tough areas and try to inhabit another person's mind. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I hope that you had as much fun as I did with Alexandra. I hope that you learned something. I hope that you've got something to share. Go ahead and throw in the comments your favorite fan books. Let us know what other content you want to learn about with us, what else we can bring to you as a community resource. And as always, please write more light into your life.